Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jim.
I'm Jim Goldstein. Happy to be here. And I've been doing a lot of thinking about this topic, about self-love. How many people here find it really kind of hard to love yourself unconditionally? Yeah, it's tough. I do much better loving other people. I can let people off the hook for stuff I can't let myself off the hook for at all. Somebody said this thing to me, if we talk to others the way we talk to ourselves in our heads, we'd have no friends. It's kind of true, isn't it? Oh, good one. Imagine that's just saying to somebody, good one, you idiot. No friends. You know, I wonder sometimes why it is that people have a hard time loving themselves. And I think it's just kind of a product of childhood. How many people here have struggled with a certain amount of perfectionism? Yeah, it's a big deal. Okay. If you ever wonder why do people become perfectionists, you could say, well, they just really want to do a great job or they have this commitment. It's not really that, I don't think. I mean, I like excellence and I like going for the best you can be and stuff, but perfectionism is sort of never letting yourself off the hook, ever. And I've thought about this, and what I believe is you know, because I've worked with people for years, and I think what happens is when you're little, you come up with this plan because it feels so bad to be criticized. When you're criticized and you're compared and you're judged and people tell you what's wrong and what's wrong, it hurts. And I think people come up with an idea in their head. They can't stand being reproached. It just feels terrible. And they think, you know, if I was perfect, I would be above reproach. And if I could be perfect, then there would be nothing to criticize. So I could be hard on myself, but don't worry, I got this covered. I'm already beating myself up. There's no room for you to throw a punch. I'm hitting myself with a bicycle chain. So you see, it doesn't make sense? That you keep thinking that you could somehow be above reproach, but in the process, you're reproaching yourself constantly and never letting up. So when you put that together with self-love, it's not so easy. I've had this interesting experience. I've been severely ADD and ADHD my whole life. I'm very severely. There's this running joke in my family that when I was 3, I went to bed one night, I took off my shoes. In the morning, we couldn't find one of my shoes. We never found it. This kind of stuff, okay? So I'm feeling like, how can you love yourself when you do about 7 or 8 stupid things a day? Think about that. Sir, don't you want to take your laundry? You just paid for it. Oh, yeah, funny. You know, this all day long kind of squirrel, you know. It's how do you mix that with, oh, I'm great, I love myself? It's a hard thing to sort of come to terms with. The only good thing I can tell you is the older I get, my friends are catching up to me. It's so cool. They're doing all kinds of stupid stuff. I'm like, I've been doing this my whole life. You forgot you put your coffee on top of your car and you drove away? I've done that since I was 16. Anyway, we talk a lot in here about the power of our thoughts. And I do think that self-love is something that you have to kind of do. There's a direct relationship between your behavior and your feelings, your thoughts and your feelings. And so I don't think you can just go around and love yourself on top of your own beliefs that you're not okay or that you're not worthy. If you've decided that you're not worthy, that's pretty powerful. And so to try to put icing over that, it's probably not going to be anything that's edible. I think instead that I work with couples a lot, and one of the things I say to couples is, you will not always feel love. I can see, sometimes I say, how you doing on a scale from 1 to 10, in terms of how close you are? 10 is very close, 1 is different planets. And they say, oh, great, 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 until something happens. Have you ever noticed that? And it's like, 1. You get just like, oh, now I can't stand you. But, love, 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 I hate you. So here's the interesting thing. You can't always feel love. However, you can always be loving. This is a big deal. You can always be loving. And if you be loving and you behave in a loving manner, you will actually feel love, and you'll feel more love for yourself and the other person. So in the same way that I advise couples to do this, to be loving, do loving things for each other. Even if at the moment you don't feel it, you can still be loving. It increases the love that you feel. It does something. And you can do this for yourself. There are things that you can do that are examples of you loving yourself. So here's something, I read these, there's some things that you can do that's sort of just good for your self-esteem. One is prioritize sleep. Really. Sleep is a big deal. And many people sort of just cut it out, like, I was too busy, or I had to get up early. It's just, no, let yourself sleep, exercise, meditate. Here's another one, express gratitude. The more grateful you are, the more you express your gratitude, the more you will feel love, and that love will be of yourself as well. Someone said that one of the ways to love yourself is you have to know what it is that you do that makes you you, that makes you feel like you're you. Like, if I didn't play music, I wouldn't be me. And that's why I love coming here so much. It's like, I actually get to be who I am, and I love that, you see. So there are things inside of you that you know that you're not you if you don't do this. There are some people who say, look, I'm not me if I can't have a certain amount of organization in my life. I need to be organized. It just is, I'm out of sorts. I'm just not who I am if I can't be organized. Other people say, I need to exercise, or I just don't feel like myself. Or I need to be with friends. Or I need to be alone. I have a buddy, he considers me one of his best friends. He is really into solitude. So I'm going to tell you, he loves to be by himself, reading, does all this kind of stuff. We connect when we connect. But that's what he needs to do. There are some people who get energy from being alone, and there's other people who get energy from being around other people, and vice versa. It's just his thing. And at first I was very hurt by it. I was like, okay. That's how he has to be who he is. So I want you to start this sentence, which is, I love myself, therefore, and talk to the person next to you and say, what would you do from that sentence? I love myself, therefore, and say what you do to love yourself. Right now. What do you do? Or what will you do? What would you do? Okay, come on back. Okay, how did that feel talking about that? It's kind of like a commitment that you have to yourself. I realize that all of us, it's nobody's fault, but all of us have been raised by imperfect people who were raised by imperfect people who were raised by imperfect people. So it's no wonder that we have these wrong ideas about ourselves and that they're not very enlightened, that we think we're not okay. And yet, the responsibility of an adult is to say, okay, I came through that. I didn't know from nothing when I was coming up. Of course, I believed whatever my parents told me, or I rejected whatever they told me, or whatever. But I'm not that anymore. Now it's my turn to choose. I can actually make choices that I couldn't make before. And the more enlightened you get, the more you feel freedom to actually make these choices. So, by creating the behaviors and the signals that you're, in fact, an amazing person, you start to feel like an amazing person. That's how it works. You do things that are loving towards yourself, and you will love yourself more. Sometimes, did you ever fantasize about, boy, I wish my parents had done this. I wish you meet somebody else's parents and they just seem so accepting or whatever, at least of you. I heard this story once. John Travolta went for his first interview, acting interview, and there was these three people sitting at this desk, and they asked him to read this thing. And he started reading, he had a very thick New York accent. And they just stopped him right in the middle and said, look, we just got to stop you right here. Look, I don't mean to be cruel or anything, but you are not meant to act. You don't have any talent. And this is going to be a waste of time and money for you. You really shouldn't pursue acting. You're really not good. And I know it's harsh and everything like this, but we're really saving you a lot of time and money. And he said, I came out of there and I thought to myself, what was wrong with those guys? That's amazing. He said, my parents used to say, did you see that? Did you see him take out the trash? That was incredible. They just thought he was amazing. But actually, that doesn't do it either. Because I know parents who are nothing but loving and praise and unconditional positive regard for their kids. And that kind of makes a mess later. Marry one of those kids. You see what happens. They're horrible. They expect you to think everything they do is wonderful. You see? They'll never find anybody like that. It ruins them. You see? I was a school psychologist 40 years ago, and there was this obstreperous kid in this class, and he was always acting out and disruptive and disrespectful and nasty to the teachers and stuff like that. And I had seen a lot of abuse. You see these homes and kids, somebody's beating them or something like this, and I met the parents. I felt like, here we go. Anyway, I met these parents, and they were absolutely lovely. They were the nicest people. And right in the middle of it, he's sitting there with us. He comes back in the room, and then she says something. He says, oh, shut up, Ma. And they look at me like, do you believe how he speaks to us? And then it hit me like, oh, wow, that's another thing about self-love. What they were saying to him was, we love you. You are everything. You are wonderful. We are nothing. We are nothing. No boundaries at all. You can step on us, scream at us, yell at us, and we're like, that's not very nice, Philip. It's like, but there were no consequences to that. You see what I'm saying? So unconditional positive regard has to have something to it. It has to have a boundary. There has to have respect for self in there, or the person never learns that. That was a real eye-opener for me. I was positive I was going to hate these parents. I feel like, wait till I see who are these abusers. And they really weren't. They just said to me, we don't know what to do with them. Like, because you're doormats. What do you expect? So I don't think the answer is to be perfect parents. There's no rule book, and you do what you do. And sometimes the best efforts are always misinterpreted or whatever. We have this story in my family where I was standing behind someone, and they were making salmon croquettes. You know what that is? Like little salmon patties. And I was like, all of a sudden, I was like transported back to this thing and it just felt like love. And I thought, my mother used to make these for me, and I just loved them. I look over at my sister. She's standing next to me, and she's got like tears going down her face. And I said, salmon croquettes, don't you remember Mommy made these? She says, I told Mommy I hated them. And she said, well, the boys like them. Like, you can't win. You cannot win. Well, while it makes sense to choose the thoughts that make you feel good, and we all have this responsibility, it also is impractical, unrealistic, and probably not even desirable to think that the goal is to be happy every minute. That's just not life. You know, sometimes a lightning strikes a forest and the whole forest burns down, and there's a lot of destruction and animals die, and it's like, what's with that? Well, that's life. That's kind of how it works. After that, the forest comes back, the ashes feed the soil, and it comes back richer, and things happen. And there's ups and downs in life, and you have to sort of have a place where that's acceptable, so that you're not just shooting for every day is sunny. And does that make sense? When my kids were little, they liked fishing, but it was such a narrow aspect of it. If I took my kids, when they were little, if I took them fishing, I was really into fishing, but they were like, this stinks, they're not biting. Like, if they don't bite right away, if they don't get a bite right away, it's like, I don't want to do this anymore. Because they were the only joy for them was the hit of the fish on the hook. They weren't, what's the rest of this stuff? We're just sitting here, what are we doing? But if you know anything about loving fishing, you kind of have to love all of it. The buying of the lures, the thinking about this, the checking the weather, the packing up the boat, all this kind of stuff is all part of it. If you love all of that, you're okay. The good, the bad, and and even if the bad stuff, Neil and I went fishing one time. We were so proud of ourselves. We'd come this whole way, and then at the last second, we hit a rock and the canoe tipped over. We lost everything. We had to be rescued. It was this whole thing. We're like, hey, we made it all the way down the Susquehanna. Oops. But it's a great story. It was amazing. Anyway, I think it's very important that we don't paper over the parts of us that are wounded and that have made us wallow up our heart. I don't blame anybody for protecting their heart. We've all been hurt. And it's hard to feel love for yourself when you're so protected because you don't want to get hurt. And so I really do recommend that people do work on that kind of dark side of themselves, the part of them that is hurt and can hurt other people, and to be unrealistic about that. I always think about this, like, where are we headed now? Where we're headed eventually, we'll all be like Snow White, and little birds will drop, oh, like this little bluebird on my finger, and the squirrels will talk to you. Nah, that ain't happening. And it doesn't need to. It really doesn't need to. I do think that one way to look at it so that you can love yourself is that you have to kind of be where you are. You really can't be any place other than where you are. I always thought it was so weird. Like when I was in elementary school, we would come out for recess when I was in first grade, and the big sixth graders would be there, head of the safety patrol. And they would laugh at us. Like, look at these kids, do you believe how little they are? And I used to think, I'm 6. I gotta be this little. They're making fun of us because we're not 12. You can't be where you're not. You can't be where somebody else is. You can't, and actually that helps me let people off the hook a lot. They can only function from the level of consciousness they're at. They can't be anyplace else. And that's where you have to love them from, right there. And the same is true of us. When we make mistakes, we just don't have it yet. It seemed like a good idea at the time. But that's as far as you can go with that. And so this is the preciousness of life, is that we're alive and we get to make mistakes and learn from them and be better towards ourselves. I had a really good experience of forgiving myself. Anybody here have trouble forgiving yourself? Screw-ups? That's been such a tough one. And it's glaring me right in the face, look what you did, I know I'm not supposed to eat sugar. It doesn't agree with me. But I can do this thing like this unconscious eating, I'm watching TV and I can see unconsciously I'm just bouncing from salt to sweet. Have you ever done that? Just I'll just have, and I said, I had a few Fritos. Lauren said, you had 18 Fritos. You had the whole bag. What are you talking about? Well, then I needed some grapes. So then I ate all these grapes and I feel horrible. And then I ate Alka-Seltzer. Slow learner here. And I'll tell you, the next day I was like, okay, I got it. Don't do that. Don't do that. And I just feel okay about it. It was I'm happy to be alive, and I'm happy I got another day, and I'm happy that whatever that horrible feeling was went away. And this is it. We're all in our own little training session. But you don't want to wait till you're really great before you love yourself. Just do it now. Love yourself now. And as much as possible, when you do fun things, it puts you in touch with that love of a child. Do you know people that are young at heart? I was saying this to Lauren. Oh, by the way, that little exercise I did in the meditation about talking to your little child, I did it myself the other day, and I said, it's okay. When you grow up, you're going to marry Lauren. It's cute. This gets good later. If you're young at heart, it sort of just gives you this opportunity to just enjoy whatever it is, including the mistakes. And it's so wonderful that you get another day that you're living. I've watched my mother-in-law have just a whole rebirth since we had her move down here from Philadelphia. And she started in this little retirement community over in King Farm. And now she seems younger. She's young at heart because she has this posse of girlfriends that she goes around, and she's on the food committee and all this stuff. It's so neat. She's doing it, 94, still pretty spry. But it's very inspiring to me. So I happen to love this song, Young at Heart, if you've ever heard it. I'm going to sing it after this. But I do think that the more you feel how you want to feel, instead of just waiting for it to be good, you may set up a vibration where you're just waiting for things to get good. And so the universe is giving you almost here. Feel like it's good now. Let yourself feel like you already have it, because you do. And then it'll start to manifest, and it'll show up that way. Anyway, thank you very much. This is Young at Heart, sung originally by Frank Sinatra. Fairy tales can come true, it can happen to you if you're young at heart. For it's hard, you will find, to be narrow of mind if you're young at heart. You can go to extremes with impossible schemes. You can laugh when your dreams fall apart at the seams, and life gets more exciting with each passing day, and love is either in your heart or on its way. Don't you know that it's worth every treasure on earth to be young at heart. For as rich as you are, it's much better by far to be young at heart. And if you should survive to 105, look at all you're derived out of being alive. And here is the best part, you'll have a head start if you are among the very young at heart. John Paul. If you should survive to 105, look at all you derive out of being alive. Oh, and here is the best part, you'll have a head start if you are among the very young at heart. If you are among the very young at heart. Thank you.